I'm joined here by our tinnitus specialist, Dr. Alexandra Taylor. And Let me share our slides here and we'll get started. Everyone's seeing those, I'm assuming. So just a little bit about us, not a whole lot, I promise. This is mostly going to be about tinnitus and the ways we can treat it, especially Lenire. A little bit about me. I am the chief audiology officer at Aberdeen Audiology. I've had the practice now for 17 years, which is kind of mind-boggling. And Dr. Taylor has been with us for a few of those years. I like to get into complex cases including um, balance cases, auditory processing cases, and of course tinnitus cases. I'm also an adjunct professor at Salus at Drexel University, and I'm currently the president of the Pennsylvania Academy of Audiology. I'm a family man as well, so I wear a number of hats. So that's enough about me. We'll let Dr. Taylor introduce herself a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm Dr. Taylor. I'm an audiologist at Aberdeen. I actually live in Asheville, North Carolina. So I'm a virtual provider for the practice. I do a lot of work with tinnitus and auditory processing disorder. But obviously, tonight we're talking about tinnitus. So I do a number of things from just general tinnitus counseling, TRT or tinnitus retraining therapy, working with hearing aids, as well as Lenire.
With introductions out of the way and the ground rules here, let's get going. So what is our agenda for tonight? Well, we're going to talk about tinnitus, of course. What is it? What causes it? What are the treatments of it? Several will be discussed, including Lenire. That's certainly been getting a lot of attention lately. And as I said, we're saving a little bit of time at the end for a question and answer session. But one other ground rule that I want to get out of the way, unless we say otherwise, um, everything we talk about tonight in terms of treatment options for tinnitus are evidence-based, meaning that these methods have gone through research, they've been published in peer-reviewed studies, meaning other professionals, other researchers have reviewed these studies and felt they were worthy of sharing, across the world. So we like to use what's evidence-based. In the rare instances that something's not evidence-based, then we rely on our years upon years of experience. But really, everything we do, unless we say otherwise tonight, is evidence-based.
All
Uh,
right.
and you're right. Take it away, Alex.
Woohoo. Okay, so we're going to start pretty easy here with what is tinnitus. I'm sure a lot of you can define it in your own ways and what you hear in your ears, but from a clinical perspective, we define tinnitus as the perception of a sound without an external sound source. So you're hearing a sound, but other people aren't hearing it. The other way I like to define it is as a benign body sound or neutral body sound. And I like to define it this way because it ties into our goals or outcomes with tinnitus management, which is neutrality. So a neutral disposition, overall emotion towards the ringing. And we have two different buckets of tinnitus here. So we're going to categorize it in two different ways: pulsatile and non pulsatile, and objective and subjective. So, starting with non pulsatile, which is probably a lot of you guys, this is the typical buzzing, hissing, teapot kettle type of ringing, either in one or both of your ears. And then pulsatile tinnitus can have that component, but what makes it different is the tinnitus is actually beating in conjunction with the heartbeat. So, if that is you, then certainly we'd want to know that. Both are treatable, but treatment plans may look just a little different between those two. And then objective and subjective. So 99.999% of patients have what we call subjective tinnitus, meaning that you're the only one who hears it. So there's not really a way to measure it per se. And while objective tinnitus, I could put my ear up next to somebody and actually hear it. Now, I've been an audiologist 7 years. I've not seen a case of objective tinnitus. I don't think Dr. Coyne has either. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
I have
So
not.
very, yep, very, very rare.
Yeah, and I've been doing it a little more than 7 years. So,
Yeah.
um, okay. And so There is great news though. While there's many different, this is something to keep in mind because the next slide is a little daunting perhaps. But the great news is that while there are many potential causes of tinnitus, an audiologist is quite capable of helping you figure out what the cause is and then therefore what the most appropriate treatment is. So we're going to talk about a few different causes or maybe even a lot of different causes, and it gets kind of complex. To us as doctors of audiology, this is what we deal with all day, every day. Let us be your guide through this, and we'll get you where you're going. So back to Dr. Taylor for all these causes. You're gonna go through all of these in a lot of detail, right?
We are absolutely not going to do that. So we just wanted to list off several different things that can be correlated to tinnitus. I just want to touch on three of them really quickly, but feel free to just look down the list there. So starting with hearing loss. So most of the time, tinnitus is secondary to hearing loss or a shift in hearing. So I just want to clarify that you can have normal hearing and still have tinnitus in your ears, meaning that maybe you started off at the super good end of normal and then we had a shift down to the lower end of normal. So that's why we say either hearing loss or a shift in your hearing can cause the ringing to start. And then noise exposure there, that's another big one that we see. Noise exposure can definitely damage those structures in the inner ear, leading to permanent damage and tinnitus there too. And then all the way at the bottom, stress and anxiety. So this is another big one. I always like to say that tinnitus management is also individualized stress management. So a lot of what we do is we want to know about you, your day, your job, your family, and we can talk about how to mitigate some of that stress because we know stress and tinnitus go together. If we have an increase in stress, we have an increase in cortisol, our stress hormone, and we know tinnitus goes up with it. So lots of different causes there.
Right. And sometimes it can be a little combination of a few, but
Oh yeah.
there could be concussion and stress and anxiety. Those things go hand in hand for sure. So, but again, um, we are more than capable. It's what we do all day, every day, of helping you figure out what the cause is, and again, lead you to the right treatment.
Yep. And sending that point home right here. So it's our job to figure out what's going on and get a thorough case history. So the first step would be y'all calling the office to schedule a consult call with me. And we'd have a 20-minute call or so. I'm going to ask you some questions. I want to know about things you've tried, things you've done. Maybe you've seen another audiologist, an ENT, talk to your GP about this. And I'll ask the right questions to figure out, okay, here's what we think is going on, and then make a game plan for treatment.
Uh, Fun little fact. This is relevant. It's a fun fact, but it's a relevant fact. Uh, Dr. Taylor and I first met when she was a student in my classroom. The class was clinical problem solving, and so basically, this class is where you sort of solve mysteries of cases. Um, some of them are real, some of them are a little made up, a little fictional, but it's problem solving. It's using logic. It's using evidence. If this, then that. What does the research tell us? If we see this test result, then we must have this. And so, dare I say, students seem to enjoy the class, but also in my mind, it is the start of what trains us how to solve problems like these, such as tinnitus. So hopefully that's a
Look at us coming full circle
I know,
now.
I know. Here we go.
Okay, so this is an important slide. This is, if there's anything that you take home from this presentation, let it be this one. So the goals of treatment. We're about to get into 5 different types of treatment for tinnitus, but the goal for all 5 of those is the same. So we want to achieve what's called habituation. So what does that mean? Well, let's start with what it's not. So that's not, oh, learning to live with it. You got to get used to it or white knuckle it to try to just not think about it. That's not what we're talking about. Habituation is your brain actually hearing the tinnitus and realizing that it's not a threat. So that means you're still living your life. The tinnitus may be there, but it's not bothering you. So we're treating your reaction or your brain's reaction to the tinnitus and not the tinnitus itself. So the analogy here with habituation is, are you thinking about the clothes that you're wearing right now, the shoes on your feet? Maybe you're wearing a watch. Well, now that I said it, you're probably thinking about it, but before you weren't, right? Because your brain knows it's not a threat. And even though those are tactile stimuli, we can do the same thing with an auditory one like tinnitus.
So we have several treatment options. There's hearing aids, of course. They have the ability to help with hearing loss and tinnitus at the same time. You don't necessarily need to have hearing loss to try hearing aids, though. There's certain qualities and features about those that we can use. There's lifestyle modifications. We're going to get into those a whole lot more. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. That can be very helpful. Mindfulness meditation goes somewhat hand in hand with cognitive behavioral therapy, but not exactly. We use those. And of course, we use more and more these days bimodal stimulation. The most prominent of those, as a matter of fact, the only one of those I think at the moment is Lenire. And so we'll certainly be talking about that.
Yeah. So let's start with number one, which is hearing aids or sound therapy or TRT or tinnitus retraining therapy. So this is typically with hearing aids, lots of different ways to set up hearing aids, of course. If there's hearing loss present, hearing aids may be part of that. Research says about 68% or so of patients with hearing loss get benefit from their tinnitus with just hearing aids. So just aiding the hearing loss. So we're filling in those gaps of your hearing, and that can help dissipate some of that tinnitus percept. Now, sometimes we need to go a step further and we go to amplification plus what's called a masker. And that's a sound you and I would program together. It could be nature sounds, white noise, pink noise, chime like sounds, but this is a sound that would be through the hearing aids as well. And you would listen to it pretty much every day for all waking hours. The goal with the masker is two different things. We want it to be pleasant and we want it to be ignorable. And that's really key. So we want it to be pleasant, we want it to be ignorable. And we want it to be those things because over time your brain can hear that masker, it's soothing, it's nice, and it applies that same neutrality to your tinnitus. So you don't need the masker long term with hopes that TRT, we might have it in there for several months, maybe several years, but eventually we kind of wean off that and then the neutrality is achieved. And then last there we have masker only. That's for people who don't have any hearing loss. We can still set up the hearing aid as what's called a sound generator, where we just have a masker in there. Some people wear them just during the day, and then some patients wear them at night while they're sleeping as well if they have a problem getting to sleep. Okay, this is probably my favorite. This is number two. We're going to talk about lifestyle modifications. So, on our consult call, we get into the nitty gritty of everything. I mean, I want to know about your diet, your coffee consumption, alcohol consumption, if exercise is a part of your week to week, your sleep hygiene. All of these things can trigger and exacerbate tinnitus. But the cool thing about lifestyle modifications is you can leave our consult call with action points to implement almost immediately. So you get to leave our first consult call 3, 4, 5 things to start doing right away to help moving the needle in the right direction. So this could look like, hey, let's try 10 minutes of walking every day, or getting on a stationary bike, or what time are you going to bed and waking up every day? How can we better our sleep hygiene? Sleep's probably where we start. It's really, really critical. Okay, so number three is cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. So this is a type of talk therapy. It's really effective for not only just tinnitus management, but also for anxiety, depression, OCD, etc. Disclaimer, I'm not a cognitive behavioral therapist. Dr. Goyne is not a cognitive behavioral therapist. However, we do apply concepts of CBT to tinnitus counseling. So just as a quick example, what does this look like? So we want to help you break some of the negative thoughts, or we call them maladaptive thoughts, that may be wrapped around your tinnitus. So you might have thoughts on repeat every day regarding a tinnitus affecting your mood or disposition. This could be like, tinnitus is ruining my life. And so, okay, one, we have to identify that thought is there and it's not doing us any good. And so we want to neutralize that thought. And that could look like, okay, tinnitus is a part of my life, but it doesn't define me. All right, so good. That's a better thought to have on repeat, right? So then we could even go a step further and say, well, how do I define me? What does define me? Maybe I'm a mom, I'm a dad, I'm a teacher, I'm a friend. So right there, with just 2 steps going into that, we've already broken that negative thought pattern, right? So we do a little bit of that just in general tinnitus counseling, but of course, not a CBT. Dr. Goyne and I do have 2 different referral sources for CBTs that we've talked to about tinnitus management, and we'd be happy to get you set up with them as well.
And we may be getting an app. Everyone loves an app. We may be getting an app that is a tinnitus focused cognitive behavioral therapy app as well. I think we're going to be adding that to the equation as well soon too. So,
yep. Okay. And so the fourth treatment pillar, if you will, or piece of the pie is mindfulness meditation. And this is another really powerful tool for getting into a deep relaxation state. Now, you might be seeing meditation and you might think, that's not for me. I don't want to sit with my eyes closed for 10 minutes and not do anything. That's okay. This meditation can look like lots of different things. There's tons of different breathing exercises, guided meditation apps too. And the app Dr. Goins mentioning does have a few of those on there. This could be body checks. So just sitting with yourself and trying to relax your jaw, relax your shoulders. Maybe you're really tense here or your gut. And this is 5 minutes. So you spend 5 minutes a day and you and I can work together on what does a meditation practice look like for you. The goal here, and I promise I wouldn't put too many definitions out. This is the last definition, is tapping into what's called our parasympathetic nervous system or our rest and digest. Everybody knows its antithesis, the fight or flight mode, right? So we're in fight or flight, heart rate's elevated, we're in a state of distress. That is not good for tinnitus. So we want to implement as many things as possible to get into our rest and digest or tap into that parasympathetic nervous system. And meditation is a really good way to do that.
I think one thing I might add to that, if I may, I think a lot of times people overcomplicate meditation. It's actually not as complicated as
Right.
it is. So
And it can be individualized. Yeah.
yeah, it's can be different things for different folks. Okay, bimodal stimulation. This is so bimodal stimulation is sort of a broad category, but Lenire is part of that. And up until several months ago, there were two outfits doing bimodal stimulation. One of those has folded, and so really we are left with Lenire. Fortunately, Lenire is showing really good results. So I don't see that as too much of a problem at the moment that there's only one, but I think more will be coming. The research is quite compelling, but behind it. And so what is bimodal stimulation? Well, the definition is it is the simultaneous stimulation of both the auditory system and in this case, the somatosensory system or the network of nerves that are responsible for touch, pressure, tactile type things. And it helps the brain rewire itself and reduce the neural activity associated with tinnitus. And so, in other words, by combining the sound stimulation with synchronized and very mild electrical stimulation, this feels like soda on your tongue. It's very fizzy kind of. It does not feel like electrical stimulation at all. We've both had it on our tongues. It does not feel like electrical stimulation. And so the brain learns that the tinnitus is less important. In other words, the way our brains work is if you are getting stimulation of something through two different sources, and in this case, it's auditory and somatosensory, then the brain places more emphasis on that sound. But on the other hand, if a sound is present through a single source, then the brain begins to de-emphasize it. And so since your tinnitus is not being synchronized with another mode, the brain begins to de-emphasize your tinnitus over time. So really, that can get into some complicated neuroscience, but the bottom line is we're teaching your brain to pay less attention to the tinnitus. In other words, we're kind of accelerating the habituation that we talked about a few slides ago.
Keyword. Remember that word.
Yes.
Habituation.
Habituation is a big word. But again, habituation before Lenire and before some other things could potentially take a while. I mean, it would take 6 months sometimes, 18 months sometimes. And so Lenire really sort of accelerates the process a little bit. So that's sort of bimodal stimulation in general, but more on Lenire specifically. It's got 3 parts to it, basically. There is a really good set of Bluetooth headphones. There is the tongue stimulator. And then there is a unit a little bit larger than a cell phone. It sort of looks like, an old iPod is kind of what it looks like. And basically, you are listening to sort of a combination of environmental noise, chimes, tones, music. It's kind of a relaxing, pleasant sound. And that sound is synchronized with the stimulation of the tongue. You do this for What's really best is 2 sessions a day, each session being about 30 minutes long. And we try not, in an ideal world, people won't do much else when they are doing the treatment. We're okay with you reading. We're okay with you doing some breathing exercises, kind of like we were alluding to a few slides ago. There's something called box breathing that we kind of recommend. What we really don't want is folks scrolling on their phones. That kind of gets the brain a little ramped up and some of that cortisol kicking in, and we don't really want that. So, but honestly, a lot of people like it. Once they've done some 30-minute, a couple 30-minute sessions a day for a couple of days, they realize that they kind of like just having some quiet time and letting the brain and the body calm down a little bit. And in our office, and really, I think most of the offices that are showing good success with Lenire, they are combining Lenire and bimodal stimulation with some of the other treatments and approaches and tricks and hacks that Dr. Taylor was talking about in the previous slides. And so basically, Lenire has been well studied. It is a FDA approved device. There were 3 large clinical trials. 95% of compliant clinical trial participants reported improvement when evaluated after 12 weeks. And 91% of participants saw sustained improvement in tinnitus severity when evaluated at 12 months post-treatment. So in other words, they followed these people for 12 months and they were still in a pretty good place with their tinnitus. It had not returned. It's not like the treatment wore off. It wasn't like they had to, do these maintenance sessions with Lenire. They were doing pretty well.
I just want to add, because I have a lot of people ask me this on consult calls, like, what are people saying when they finish their treatment with Lenire? And what people are saying is that they're just living their life. So they're not bothered by it, or maybe they're having now, every day was a bad day, 7 out of 7 days a week. And maybe it's 5 out of 7 days now, they're really good and they're not thinking about it, but maybe they have a day that it kind of still creeps up and then it dissipates again. So I just want to give you a real world tangible, hey, this is what feedback is. But everybody that has gone through so far is making progress. We have some patients that are using it beyond the 12 weeks, and that's okay. Lenire says that's fine too. We have some people using it up to 18 weeks. So we really work with you, depends your starting point, of course. But again, that's another individualized treatment. Lenire is utilized differently from patient to patient after that 12 weeks.
Right. Yeah, we had we Dr. Taylor and we had sort of discussed doing something like this kind of webinar kind of a thing when we first were able to offer Lenire, and we decided, what, let's wait until we, yes, the research looks good, or else we wouldn't be using it, but let's use it with some folks first and make sure that we ourselves can report good success.
Right.
And we've had it for several months now. We have a good number of people in it, and everyone is progressing pretty well. I mean, I hate to, I do not like to overpromise. I do not like to, overpromise, and then you set things up for failure. But people are really doing pretty well.
No, I we'll go back to that slide too.
Oh,
I
right.
want to say one thing
Yeah, we
there.
never covered that slide exactly. Oop.
That's
Well,
okay. But I also like to joke that
there we go.
Lenire is just making my job very easy. It's working well, and I'm like, this is making my job very easy. Okay, awesome. But with that said, I just want to drive home this point right here. So the best approach is a holistic one, meaning that even though you might be a great Lenire candidate, we're going to want to do Lenire in tandem with lifestyle modifications or having a meditation practice. Or if you have hearing loss, we're probably going to want to get you in hearing aids at some point as well. So, needless to say, multiple facets. We want a multiple approach to tinnitus management. And then I also want to leave you guys with, I don't want you to feel a sense of helplessness or hopelessness. If you have went to another doctor and another audiologist, PCP, ENT has said, learn to live with it. We've listed off 5 different options tonight that clearly states you do not have to live with it. You are not stuck like this. We can help you. Let us get a little bit of your background information. We want to know where you're at and then implement a plan in place accordingly.
Right. Learn to live with it is a phrase that should have been retired about 20 years ago.
We do not use that. Yes.
Yeah.
That's nope.
Yeah. Time to get with the times. Some research.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I just wanted to link two different websites. One, the ATA, this is American Tinnitus Association. They have lots of good, credible information there. So go check it out, as well as our YouTube channel. So Tom and I have made a handful of videos now on tinnitus. So anything from just misconceptions, 5 things to know about tinnitus. Does acid reflux cause tinnitus? So you can go on there and listen to some of our videos. And there's also some videos on there about balance, hearing loss, and APD. So if you're interested in all things hearing, go check out the YouTube channel.
And we went through everything really quickly. We could spend hours talking about tinnitus and the different things that we can do. But because there's so much interest in Lenire, we get calls and contact and emails about it all day, every day. And so, we wanted to get a lot of information out there, but we understand people are quite interested in that, and rightfully so. So we're going to take some time for questions here. If you would like to make an appointment, though, there's three different ways you can do that. You can call us. There's the phone number there, 610-688-6003. You can send us an email, info@aberdeenaud.com, or you can go to our website, and there is a link to schedule an appointment. Between you all and me, the online widget isn't super smart and doesn't allow for double booking. So you might not get an appointment until maybe 3 or 4 months from now if you go that route. But if you give us a call or send us an email, we can get you in much sooner, within a week or two or something like that.